So it's going to be a very, very big day for us today, Jamie. You know why? You know what's going to happen? I'm going to go to the big place downtown called the courtroom, and I'm going to tell the judge how much I love my little baby. And then I'm going to be able to keep you forever and ever and ever. And you know what? We're going to have a good time together. Because we're going to have plenty of money in our joint bank account. And you know what else? You know what else? You have such cute little hands. Look at those little hands. But you know what? They're too small to write a check. So you'll have to let your mommy write them for you. That must be your new babysitter. Her name is Mrs. Twilly.
Good morning, my lovely.
What are you doing here?
Oh, I came to accompany you to the courthouse in your day of triumph.
I do not want your company, Elliott. I don't want you anywhere near me today.
Now, is that nice? To someone who got out of bed early just to see you?
Well, why don't you just turn around and go back to bed?
My bed has been very cold and empty lately, darling. You've been neglecting me shamefully. Ah, what matter? To show that there are no hard feelings, I brought you a little present.
You did?
Yes, just a small token of my affection and esteem.
Elliott, you brought me the letter. Oh, you wonderful man. I love you. Give it to me.
No.
Oh, Elliott, we'll celebrate tonight. We will. Your bed will not be cold and empty for long. Now, come on, give it to me. A flower?
Not just a flower, Raven. A perfect rose.
This is what I think of you and your perfect rose. I want that letter, Elliott.
I'm sure you'd like to do exactly the same thing to that infamous letter of yours than you did to my perfect rose.
No, I would like to do the same thing to you. I would like to just tear you up and throw you away.
I can't see why you're so worried. You're practically home free. How long can that trial possibly last?
I don't know. A few days, I suppose.
There you are. A few days from now, this letter won't mean a thing. You'll have custody of Jamie. You'll have custody of Jamie's millions. A happy ending if ever I saw one.
You just make me so nervous. You have that stupid thing.
Ah, it's just a souvenir.
It is not. It's blackmail, and you know it. Don't you understand that letter means everything to me, especially now, since they're going to call April in the stand?
So what? It's her word against yours. And without that letter... Hello, Jamie.
Elliott, what I don't understand is why are you doing this? Don't you understand? If I get custody of Jamie, it benefits you as well as me.
Oh, I can see that.
Just think of the fun that we could have as soon as that money comes into my hands.
Where will you be then? Monticello? Or London?
What do you mean?
Or maybe Paris? Or Rio? South of France? No. I think London. Because you would want to see if your stepfather is really as crazy as they say about that actress. Or if he's still in love with you. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, Raven. You slapped the man who has your letter.
You make me so angry. Don't you understand? I have absolutely no interest in Ansel Scott.
You didn't have. But that was before you found out about that actress. It's competition that arouses you, darling.
I have not looked at another man since the day I met you.
You're such a blatant little liar. The truth is, if I hadn't had that letter, you would have been running after every pair of trousers in Monticello.
Elliott!
Don't. You'll rumple that nice, neat suit of yours. You'd want to look respectable for the judge.
Elliott, don't go away mad.
Just go away.
Must be my babysitter.
Allow me.
Mrs. Twilly?
Why, yes.
And you are Mrs. Swift?
Right. Please come in. Jamie's been dying to meet you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, isn't he a handsome little boy?
Look, I'll see you tonight.
We'll see each other before then, darling, at the courthouse.
Please, Elliott, don't go to the courtroom.
It's a public hearing, darling.
Mrs. Swift, your little boy is really precious.
Yes. I know.
It's a shame, Logan, that the Crime Commission's session and the trial had to coincide.
Yes, but the governor's conference is very important, Mike. There's no way you could miss that. We'll
That's
be
true.
fine here. It doesn't work.
April, how do you feel? Ready for that witness chair?
Oh, I think so. A little nervous, maybe.
It's only natural to have a little bit of stage fright, huh?
What about Raven's attorney, Rutledge?
I've never even heard of him before, Mike. Have you seen him?
I haven't seen him in action, so I made some inquiries about him, discreetly, of course.
Well, what'd you find out?
His specialty is matrimonial law.
He's probably handled more divorces than custody suits, though.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, I got the information from another matrimonial lawyer. The consensus seems to be he's a hard-nosed man.
Sounds like a bomber.
Like a what?
Well, that's an attorney who'll do anything he has to do in order to win.
They tend to be very rough on witnesses.
Logan, you worried about me? Don't be. I'll be fine, really. Please.
The Swift trial? What have you got to do with that?
Well, you know that Raven kidnapped her son from the hospital.
That's a pretty tough word, Deborah. Now, she didn't exactly hold the boy for ransom, did she?
All right. She abducted him, okay?
From the way I understand the situation, she simply appropriated him. She is the legal parent. She had every right to take him from the hospital.
Bet you heard that from the horse's mouth, didn't you? I'm sorry, but that is Raven's line these days, isn't it?
It happens to be a matter of legal fact. If it weren't, Logan would have been able to get a court order to obtain his son. Am I correct, or aren't I?
Technically.
Deborah, we are cops. We deal in technicalities. Let the lawyers and the judges worry about the rest of it.
Lawyers and judges. Anyway, Calvin and I finally found out where she was hiding her baby. We went to see her. And let me tell you something. That place was a pigsty.
It's a new apartment, wasn't it? Didn't she just move in?
Yes?
You ever see a new apartment that wasn't a mess?
Chief, the condition of that baby had nothing to do with moving.
All right, Deborah, if you want a change in schedule, Captain Anderson's the man to see about it.
Well, Chief, I know that. Just thought I would tell you because I know you've got an interest in this case.
Damn it, I am sick and tired of being accused of having a special interest that affects my decisions as a police officer.
Oh, wait a minute. I didn't say that.
That's just
Chief.
what you're implying. You implied that when we discussed the death of Raven's mother in that accident.
I was simply trying to find out why that woman died in a perfectly sound vehicle on an empty street.
What you were trying to find out, Detective, was whether or not somebody that we both know well might not have been responsible for a little bit of murder. Have I made that clear enough, or shall we name names?
All right. I admit it. I think Raven Swift is capable of anything.
Even killing her own mother.
Yeah, well, I guess that is going a little far, isn't it? To be perfectly honest, yes, I do think she was capable of killing her own mother. And I even thought more so when I found out about the cremation.
You still think she did that to cover up some evidence?
Look, Chief, I don't want you to think that I've got some kind of a personal vendetta against Raven. It's just that we don't care for each other. Feelings mutual.
So then I'm not the only one facing charges of personal bias, huh?
Yeah. It's just, the whole situation just seems so suspicious, you know?
Now that your suspicions have been eased, you've decided to drop the whole thing. Deborah, look at me. You have decided to drop it, haven't you?
Counselors, I believe that neither of you has appeared before me in a domestic hearing and that neither of you has been involved in a custody action before. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I've acted in several divorce actions, but not in any contested custody case.
Well, all right. I just wanted to make a brief statement about the manner in which I expect this matter to be handled by counsel as well as by your witnesses. Now, this will be a trial in every sense of the word in which we respect the rules of evidence. I will not ask a counsel to make an opening statement, and I will reserve the right to question any and all of the witnesses directly. Is that understood?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, the question of which parent should be entitled to the custody and sole control of the child is, as you know, a sensitive and highly emotional question. And the court's decision will be based solely upon what we perceive to be the welfare and the best interests of the child. The desires of the parents, even of the child himself, will have to yield to the judgment of the court.
Your Honor, the child in this case is just an infant, and we feel he should not really be brought into court.
Yeah, Mr. Nelson, the court is aware of the age of the child, and I hope that you and your client are aware that the burden of proof will rest upon you, since it is common court policy to award custody to the mother, unless it can be clearly demonstrated that she is unfit or incapable of caring for him properly.
Well, Your Honor, we feel that we will clearly demonstrate that she is indeed unfit.
Mr. Nelson, I ask that there be no preliminary statements.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, since both sides have petitioned for custody, I will let the choice of precedence be up to you.
We flipped a coin, Your Honor. Mrs. Swift will present her case for custody first.
Very well, then. You may call your first witness, counsel.
We call Mrs. Benita Thomas.
Mrs. Benita Thomas, please take the stand. Place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name.
Mrs. Benita Thomas.
Be seated.
Mrs. Thomas, what is your employment?
I'm director of the Medford Foundation.
What is that exactly?
It's a non-profit institution dedicated to public welfare, particularly the welfare of children. We're mostly engaged in research studies and advisory functions.
Mm-hmm. And what did you do prior to becoming director of this foundation?
I was employed by the Monticello Department of Public Welfare.
You were an investigator?
That's correct.
How many years were you employed in this job?
About 12 years. My last job was department manager.
So, Mrs. Thomas, you are obviously very experienced in this field, are you not?
Mrs. Thomas is very well known to the court. You may proceed with the testimony.
Certainly, Your Honor. Mrs. Thomas, were you ever in the home of Mrs. Raven Swift and her son Jameson Swift?
Yes, I was.
On what date?
August the 1st.
Did Mrs. Swift know that you were coming?
No, she did not.
It was a total surprise visit, then?
Well, it should never be a complete surprise. Would-be adoptive parents and parents with custody disagreements should realize that their circumstances could be investigated. However, we do like to keep the date of the actual visit open.
Simply because you don't want any artificial preparation for your visit?
Well, we do want to observe the situation on a normal basis, yes.
So, when you called at the home of Mrs. Raven Swift, unexpectedly, what did you find?
Generally, the home conditions of the child seem satisfactory.
Just satisfactory, Mrs. Thomas, or very satisfactory?
Well, I'd say quite satisfactory. However, it's really based on external impressions.
The child seemed healthy, well taken care of?
Yes, he did.
What sort of physical surroundings had been arranged for him?
Well, he was in a very attractive nursery. It seemed to be completely equipped, and he had an extensive wardrobe.
What sort of arrangements had been made for the child's care? I mean, other than the normal care a mother generally gives her child, was there a baby nurse?
Yes, there was.
Were you familiar with this particular nurse?
I knew her by reputation.
Was it a good reputation?
Your Honor, we feel that it's irrelevant to get into debate as to whether a mother can take care of her child better than a hired nurse.
Nevertheless, I will allow the latitude, Mr. Nelson.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mrs. Thomas, in your objective report to this court, Isn't it true that you saw no reason in the world why Raven Swift should not retain custody of her child?
I made no recommendation for custody. I simply stated that I was aware of no home conditions that would be against the best interest of this child.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The counsel, you wish to cross-examine?
Yes, sir. Miss Thomas, I have your report here. Admittedly, I'm not familiar with the child custody battles, but I am familiar with legalistic language, and seems to me to be very short. How many times did you visit Mrs. Swift?
Once.
Just once? Is it common to make decisions based on just one visit?
No, not ordinarily. We usually make 2, 3 visits, but I was very busy at the foundation at the time, and...
So then you made your judgment on the care of Jamie Swift based on only one visit. You said that Mrs. Swift was not expecting you, but were you aware that she was expecting someone else?
I don't know what you mean.
Well, you didn't know that all the Mother Goose wallpaper and the baby furniture and the extensive wardrobe you mentioned, plus the hired nurse herself, were merely for the benefit of impressing Nadine Scott, Raven's mother, who was on her way from London.
Objection, Your Honor. This is entirely irrelevant. Totally.
Yes, I'll sustain.
Oh, I thought that Mrs. Thomas knew. I'm sorry. I have no further questions.
Very well, then, you may step down, Mrs. Thomas. Mr. Rutledge, you may call your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. I wish now to call Mrs. Raven Swift.
Mrs. Raven Swift, please take the stand. Place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name.
Raven Swift.
Be seated.
So then, Mrs. Swift, you and your husband have actually been separated for almost a year.
Yes, we have a separation agreement with a divorce action pending.
Mrs. Swift, do you bear any particular rancor toward your husband?
No, it was just one of those marriages that didn't work. My husband was very busy. He's the district attorney of Monticello, and he was running for office when we were first married, so of course he didn't have the time to devote to his
Your
family.
Honor, this is a custody hearing, not a divorce trial.
Yes, Mr. Rutledge, please confine your questions to the subject of the child.
Certainly. Mrs. Swift, isn't it true that you left the United States about 10 months ago, just after the separation from your husband?
Yes, that's true.
And is it true also that you did not take the baby with you?
No, I was very distraught at the time, and I wanted to visit my mother. I needed to talk to her about what had happened.
And she lived in London?
Yes, she lived in London with her husband. I felt it would be very unfair of me to take my baby with me because Jamie was only 6 months old at the time, and to put him through all that travel and change of environment, I just didn't think that was right. So I called some friends of mine and asked them to take care of him for a little while.
Who were these friends?
April and Draper Scott.
Now, Mrs. Swift, when you returned from London to Monticello, what did you find?
I found that my baby was no longer in the Scott household. They had turned him over to my husband.
Turned him over? Why did they do that?
I guess Logan asked them for him, and since Mr. Scott was Logan's best friend, he did as he was asked.
You left no instructions that they were to do this?
No, absolutely not. I assumed since they were a young couple, and at the time they didn't have a baby, that they would take much better care of Jamie than Logan, who was living a bachelor's life at the time, and he was working all the time. Naturally, I thought...
Mrs. Swift, you were saying?
Naturally, I thought that Logan couldn't give Jamie the best of care any more than he can right now.
Your Honor, this is an opinion, an unqualified opinion at that.
Yes, just answer the questions, Mrs. Swift.
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Swift, what did you do when you found out that the Scotts had given your baby to your husband without your permission?
I immediately tried to get him back. I love my baby. Jamie means everything in the world to me, so I went to see several lawyers in Monticello.
And did you succeed in getting advice?
No, nobody could tell me what to do, so I decided to do what Logan did. I decided to just go take him.
Did you do anything illegal?
No, absolutely not. I just...
Excuse me. Would you mind?
Seems as though a harmony is hard to find. Always on my mind. And frustrated days pass without sight. The edge of night, half dark, half light. Do you think we might wake up someday and be aware